Homophobia is a word that hasn't been around for an awful long time. Linguistically, we tend to assume that any word in common usage has been around since, 1200 BC. But in fact, most of these words are relatively recent, as in within my lifetime, or at least within my parents' or grandparents' lifetime, which, linguistically speaking, is recent. Homo means same, and phobia means fear. So what it should mean is fear of the same, which I can understand. What it does mean is fear of homosexuality. I think it's a problem word because, one, it focuses on homosexuality, and two, phobia has a specific clinical meaning. It's an irrational fear and hatred of something of a strength that actually interferes with your life. And for the most part, that which we call homophobia is not that. It's institutionalized oppression. It's assuming what normal is and leaving any variation in gender out. It's forgetting that there are options. It's assuming. It is, alas, also fear and hatred to the degree where people get beaten, killed. Matthew Shepard was a martyr of gay rights in 1998, not that long ago, and he was a victim of crazy people. Homophobia was their trigger, but I think ultimately they were crazy people. And if you watch the Laramie Project, the folks from that area say again and again and again, we don't care what you do what you like, as long as, if you're not doing it in my front yard. I've said that about where I grew up in Maine. And that is an attitude, but it's also a lie. Because we define don't do it in my front yard really broadly sometimes. So do whatever you want as long as you don't do it in my front yard means don't walk down the street holding hands with your boyfriend. Because then I have to see it. And that's horrible. It's a real unevenness. You can be heterosexual as long as you're not in my front yard about it. That doesn't go over. Gosh, we can't have a man and a woman kissing on TV. We can't have dating sites dedicated to heterosexuality. It's really uneven, and the fact that it's a little bit more subtle in some cases makes it all the more insidious. And the thing about homophobia is it's not about being gay. It's sexism. It's pure and simple the idea that men must behave as men are thought to behave, and women must behave as women are thought to behave. And anything that muddies the waters is unacceptable, is taboo. So until recently, women wearing pants, men wearing skirts. Once upon a time, people were oppressed because of being left-handed. And it was, in some cases, a fairly big deal. Children are having their knuckles rapped, and they were beaten in order to be made to be right-handed. And this, in some cases, interfered fairly actively with their learning, and messed them up somewhat. And it definitely instilled a fear of being abnormal. But now we think on that, and we think that's kind of barbaric. We think that handedness is not particularly relevant. We think that while there may be occasional concessions, like different kinds of scissors, there's no point in making a big deal out of it. We see that your average person can actually learn to use right or left-handed in certain situations, and it becomes less two checkboxes that are mutually exclusive, and more like not even like a spectrum, not even like a one-dimensional spectrum, but like probability clouds. Right? You've got I'm here and you're there and you're there and you're there, and it will tend to cluster into two groups. But only when you average a large enough sample. I really think that things like gender and sexuality will become like that one day, and I really hope it starts being that way soon. I think I already see that sort of shift. But ultimately, right now, in most of our culture, men must be men and women must be women, and any deviation from that is either ignored or assumed to be just a quirk, or actively either literally or metaphorically beaten out of you. And in all this, I speak of sort of generally, the people at the middle of the bell curve, not everyone, but what I see mostly in gay rights movements is that they want gay people to be treated like everyone else, which means repressed and not allowed to act outside of the gender norms like everyone else, except in this one little behind closed doors aspect. Fine, if that's what you want, but that's not being free. That's just swapping one relatively small part of your life, putting that part back in the closet, and then the rest of it you get to be okay. And I don't think that's okay. I think it excludes people who can't or won't or simply don't want to behave like their perceived gender. It makes terms like straight acting important. It makes people argue about how gay pride parades hurt the cause, because people will look at that and see nothing but drag queens and perverts. Whereas really what's at stake is the right to be a drag queen or a pervert. No one needs to fight for the right to be normal. Ultimately, I think the fight is everyone's fight. I think the fight is the fight to be yourself, to discover for yourself who that is, and to be somewhere in the probability cloud, and not just in a two-pole system or even a single one-dimensional spectrum. And I'm not just talking about who you sleep with, right? We've gone from gay straight to gay straight and bi, and some really advanced people look at the Kinsey scale from 0 to 6, think that homophobia and sexism will one day be considered, as just sort of this quaint and irrelevant, but occasionally barbaric thing that used to be important. And I think that it's important now that we realize that that's the fight we have to make. The fight to be normal is not the fight to make. And as such, the fight to be abnormal, I guess, is not just gay people's fight. I think that everyone has a stake in this. Everyone. And I think that, once again, it's a question that won't go away through legislation, but by becoming ultimately irrelevant, because society doesn't give a damn one day. So that's where the change has to be. And more than that, I think we should fight for the right to not get killed, to not get shot, beaten, stabbed, for being strange, for being different. And we need to fight to not be oppressed because we're abnormal. Simple as that.